You never know what's around the corner. You never know from one day to the next what can happen, what events can take place that may or may not affect your own life. 2001 was an event that occurred that affected many people's lives, and everybody can probably remember exactly what they were doing at that particular moment. Now, 2001 also holds actually a special memory for me. Nothing related to that, because in April of 2001 I actually moved into my very first brand new house, a build I watched being created from the ground up, from just open land to what it became. And that was probably one of the most, one of the nicest things that has ever happened to me, because it sort of culminated a few years of hard work, growing up from a really poor background, and eventually to a position where my business had taken off. I was doing really well, and I'd now managed to buy my own first brand new property. So 2001 started very special for me. Going back to my Analogue days, the very first thing I bought when I moved into my new house was a beanbag and a hi-fi system comprising of a Rotel preamplifier, a Rotel power amp, a Marantz signature CD player, and a couple of B&W tower speakers and a B&W subwoofer. And I also bought a flat screen TV, which had just started coming out at the time. And so in my whole house, the one room that was furnished just contained a beanbag and a hi-fi system. I even bought my hi-fi before I went out and purchased a bed. So basically I slept on some quilts for a few weeks until I'd arranged to have a bed. But as you can see, my priorities lay more in my love of music, than actual other creature comforts. Eventually, obviously, as I went along, I started adding other bits and bobs, maybe picture on the wall, but for the size of the house it was pretty sparse, and people who came around to visit me were quite surprised. We'd go into the kitchen, which was a very large kitchen, and there'd probably be one or two plates, a few knives and forks, and a few other little bits. But when I took them into the front room and showed them my media setup, they was quite impressed. So what I'm trying to get over is the fact that I really did enjoy music, and I grew up in the punk alternative era, and so I built up a collection of records and CDs, and it's what I really enjoyed. Moving forwards to 2019, 2020, the government kindly gave all of its citizens an extended holiday, and it was during this period of time, for a couple of years, I had no work. Obviously many people didn't have much work, but effectively it ruined my business, and as a result of that, about a year after, I'd got to a position where I had to downsize. So the property I enjoyed and built and was probably one of my proudest achievements, I had to forgo and downsize. After downsizing and moving into this smaller place, the first thing I did was set up my hi-fi system, and it wasn't long. I sat down and started to listen to it, and about 20 minutes later there was a knocking on the door, and it was the chap from next door, and he said, he says, can you turn your music down? And I said, well, it isn't very loud. So I invited him in, and he looked at it, and he agreed. He said, no, it isn't loud. But what it was because of the speakers, it was just the bass note, the bump, 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 that was transmitting into his house. So I went round and listened. We set the music up pretty low in here, and in fact, as the chap was standing with me, he said, this just sounds, it sounds nice and low. He says, it's very strange. So to actually prove the point, we actually just left the CD playing, and we left it playing at that volume he agreed with in my room was perfectly fine. He said that, no, this isn't very loud at all, really. He says it's quite pleasant, actually, it's very nice. So we then went round next door, and yeah, sure enough, all you could hear is bump, 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 bump. And to be fair, I would be pretty, I wouldn't be too happy with that myself. And so, I came back, and all I can figure out is that, I don't know, for one reason or other, this bass can travel through houses, even though it doesn't sound very loud. So I asked him, I said, well, if you let me know when you're out, I'll only play my music when you're out, and then when you're back, I'll turn it off. So I said, that way I can, enjoy my hi-fi, and I won't disturb you when you get back. Because, my neighbours, you want to get on with your neighbours, don't you? Because to be fair, I wouldn't like it if neighbours were annoying me. So, I have to be fair about these things. And he says, unfortunately, his wife is wheelchair bound and rarely gets out. So it was pretty much, well, that was the end of that. So basically I had to take my system down and just put it into storage. For the next year, I've basically been listening to smaller setups, smaller speakers, and I've listened mainly to Spotify. The one thing I have discovered actually is how good Spotify actually is. So I suppose that's one good thing that came out of it. The one thing I really do like about Spotify is after you've been playing music for a certain while, going through the old stuff you used to like, it comes up with suggestions, and it has weekly suggestions, daily suggestions, and they are really good. And I'm actually finding music that I would never really have gone out and searched for before, but I'm finding music on Spotify that I think is brilliant. So that's the one good thing about Spotify, how it helps you find new music. So that's been okay. But a couple of months ago, the neighbours have actually moved out, so the house next door is empty. And a few days back, I just thought, well, I'll get my old kit out and start putting it back together. And as I was bringing all my speakers in, my piece of equipment, I had to search around for some cable. And when searching for the cable, I came across this box here. In this box wasn't my Sony PSH X500. I discovered a whole box of tapes. I'd forgotten all about these, and to show you how old this box must be, if you have a look here, you can actually see that I've got a box for a Miro Video DC30, So this will show you just how far back I've been involved in the world of video editing. I'll have to take a look and see when that came out. So I bought this when it was first released. So I did settle eventually on a Matrox system for my first edit decks. But anyhow, so here I found a box of genuine cassettes from many years ago. This box, the Miro box, doesn't actually contain the Miro card. It contains more cassettes. Look, even the War of the Worlds in cassette format. But the most important thing about this find is the fact that there'll be recordings I made from John Peel going back all those years. So there'll be session tapes and all sorts in there. But one thing I do want to take a look at is this one here by Katina Twist. That was a Derby band I followed in my punk goth days, and I really do want to extract that and see what it's like. I hope it's okay. But yeah, got a whole box of cassettes I need to explore. It's brilliant to find all of these tapes. I'm really going to enjoy listening to them. I have got one problem though. I haven't got a cassette player. So in order to listen to these, I've got to get hold of a cassette player. So I'm going to stop here because now I'm going to jump onto eBay and start searching for a cassette player, and I can't wait to start checking out these tapes. And another interesting thing I really want to find out is just what they sound like, because when I look on YouTube people keep saying how bad tape sounds, but I can remember it sounding quite nice. I really enjoyed it. So anyway, I'm going to get off now and check out eBay to see if I can find a cassette deck. And in closing, there is something maybe you can help me with. At the time of making this video, there was a video I've just made, and at the time of making this it has one view, and that one view is actually the view that I did. So if anybody actually watching this would be so kind as to click on the video here and just watch it, that would double my views, so it would give me 100% increase in my view rate, which would be really nice. It'd be really nice to have 2 views on one of my videos. Anyway, if not, don't worry, but I'll carry on because I find this quite entertaining. Cheers.